to our guests, the state of Texas, one of the leaders in the fight over auction rate securities, and Denise Voigt Crawford is Texas Securities Commissioner. Jesse and I spoke to her earlier today before that Merrill news was announced. I asked her to take us through what she and other regulators faced in reaching the Citigroup settlement.
Well, first of all, we were being inundated with complaints from investors who, as previously noted, could not get their securities out. They could not get the money out of their accounts that had been invested in auction rate securities. And this was a real problem because the investors had been told that these were cash equivalents, that these were highly liquid securities, that basically they worked just like money market accounts, except they paid a slightly higher rate of interest.
Ma'am, today's settlement goes to the heart of how the banks were selling these auction rate securities before the market collapsed in February. What were the banks doing that raised red flags?
Well, one of the things that the banks were doing was they had an inherent conflict because the banks were the ones that actually made sure that the auctions were successful. Once the banks themselves quit bidding at the auctions failed, and that's what caused the individual Main Street investors to be unable to access their money. So they were actually in two roles simultaneously. Also, I would note that this is not the first time that we've had auction rate failures. There actually were some failures back in 2006. The SEC looked at that. They looked at about 15 firms and told the firms that they needed to correct these problems. The firms agreed to do so. There were no fines assessed or anything of that nature, but as you can tell, the firms did not follow through.
And again, I'm joined by our Jesse Westbrook. He's the SEC reporter from Bloomberg. He had a question for the Commissioner. Jesse.
Commissioner, are you concerned at all as you pursue settlements with some of the other companies involved in the auction rate security market that you're going to impose a lot of pain on financial service companies that have already had a lot of write-downs from the subprime mortgage market? Can these companies sustain these settlements right now?
Well, clearly Citigroup could sustain the settlement. I think your question is a good one. The problem here is that to the extent that there is a difference in the needs of the individual investors in the firms, our job as state securities regulators is to protect the investors. The firms were complicit in this activity. There are a number of actions that have been filed, as you noted, Secretary of State Galvin in Massachusetts. Our office here in Texas has a notice of hearing out to suspend the license of UBS until such time as they make the investors whole. And the New York Attorney General, Andrew Cuomo, is looking into these matters as well. So we're very much focused on getting the money back for the Main Street investors. That's the constituency of the state securities regulators. We are not the Fed. We do not have responsibility, nor would we be so presumptuous as to assume such responsibility for the financial viability of the firms going forward.
Commissioner Crawford, Citigroup neither admitted nor denied allegations of wrongdoing. Why not?
That is typical in an agreed settlement. In this case, truthfully, it probably wasn't necessary because Citigroup is going to make everyone whole. That is what is so profoundly significant about this particular settlement. There's really nothing left to argue about. They're going to make sure that the Main Street investors get paid back. Even if those investors sold their auction rate securities at a loss, Citigroup has agreed to make up the difference and pay them the par value.
Commissioner, as our Jesse Westbrook mentioned, this is just the first of a number of similar settlements. We're hearing that other firms that sold the securities are also nearing completion of talks to resolve regulatory investigations. Can you tell us which other firms are involved and how those talks are going?
No, I'm not at liberty to share that information with you, but I will tell you that it's very likely that all of the major firms are going to come to the table and try to negotiate a settlement. And the reason I say that is because they have a reputational risk if they do not. Why, as an investor, would you want to stay with a firm that was treating their investors in such a bad fashion? So I do have to commend Citigroup in the sense that they were willing to make the investors whole, get this behind them.
And Commissioner, we have about a minute left, and I know Jesse wanted to ask you another question.
Commissioner, how does the settlement with Citigroup help you bring some of these other companies to the table? How does getting this settlement done make it more likely that, I know you don't want to discuss names, but we've heard about companies like UBS, Merrill Lynch. How does it make it possible for you to bring some of these other companies to the table?
Well, it makes it easier because, as I said, there's a reputational risk if the firms do not come and settle, and it provides a template. Now that we have a settlement with one of the major firms, and by the way, this is the largest securities settlement in history, it makes it much easier to go forward with the others. And I have to say the Texas State Securities Board, who was the primary investigating entity on this settlement, was very pleased with how this all turned out. We're very pleased that the Main Street investors are going to be repaid in full.
Texas State Securities Commissioner Denise Voigt Crawford speaking to us earlier today from Austin.